Think about the last time you had a bad headache or a fever. What did you do? You probably walked to your kitchen, took a tiny paracetamol pill, swallowed it with a sip of water, and completely forgot about the pain a few minutes later. We do it without even thinking. It is just that simple. But now, just imagine wiping that comfort away completely. Imagine you are walking into a hospital room a very long time ago. The year is 1804. Inside this room, there are no bright electric lights. There are no soft, clean beds. There are no white coats for the doctors to wear. There are no clean rubber gloves. And worst of all, there is absolutely no reliable medicine to put you to sleep during a painful operation. No paracetamol, no pills, nothing. Now picture this scenario. Imagine you had a terrible accident back then. Say a heavy wooden wagon crushed your leg on the street. The doctor could not give you a capsule to stop it. He could not give you a soothing shot. Instead, he walked into the dark room with just two things in his hands. He had a tough piece of animal leather. You had to bite down on it so you would not bite your own tongue. And he had a large, sharp iron saw to cut off your broken bone. At the time, only one thing in the whole world could help with this terrible pain. It was a sticky, dark juice. This thick juice came from the inside of a flower called the opium poppy. Doctors and pharmacists called this raw substance opium. Just imagine the scene. Before a surgery began, the doctor would pour a big spoonful of this bitter, black liquid into your mouth. Then he would stand back. He would look at your frightened face, and he would simply wait. But here is where the real terror began, because raw opium was a terrible liar. You see, using raw opium was a complete game of chance. It was like flipping a coin for your life. Sometimes the dark liquid worked perfectly. It made your brain cloudy. You fell into a peaceful sleep. You felt absolutely nothing while the doctor worked with his sharp tools. But other times, the juice did nothing at all. You stayed wide awake. You cried out in terrible pain as the sharp metal blade touched your skin. Even worse, sometimes a normal spoonful of this juice was far too strong. It would cause a patient's heart to slow down. Their breathing would stop completely. They would die in their bed before the surgery even started. Think about that for a second. No doctor could control it. The strength of the medicine was a total mystery. It changed depending on the rain. It changed depending on the sun. It changed based on how long the juice sat on a wooden shelf. Meanwhile, in a small, quiet town in Germany, a young man watched this terrible suffering every single day. He felt a deep sadness in his heart. His name was Friedrich Sertürner. He was only 21 years old. Friedrich was not a rich doctor from a famous university. He did not have expensive books or gold medals. He was just a low-level helper in a local pharmacy shop. His daily job was to sweep the dusty wooden floors. He washed dirty glass bottles. He ground dry leaves into powder using a heavy stone bowl. Day after day, Friedrich stared at the dark jars of raw opium sitting on the wooden shelves. He listened to the screams of sick people coming from the houses down the street. And slowly, he began to think about a strange new idea. It was an idea that other scientists at the time thought was completely crazy. And then he asked himself a very simple but profound question. What if the whole plant is not the medicine? What if the dirty, sticky juice of the flower
is just an organic wrapper? What if the true power of pain relief is a single, clean element hiding deep inside the plant chemistry? In those days, older scientists believed that the healing power of a plant was an invisible spirit. They thought it was a magical force. They believed you could never separate this force from the physical plant itself.
But Friedrich did not believe in invisible spirits. He believed the medicine was a real, physical object that could be caught. So what did he do? He decided to go on a hunt to find it. He wanted to catch the secret inside the poppy. He wanted to save the world from the terrible iron saw. Picture him there, every single night, after the head pharmacist locked the heavy front door and went home to sleep. Friedrich stayed behind in the laboratory. He worked completely alone in the cold room, with only the small, yellow light of a wax candle to see by. He took chunks of the sticky, black opium juice and began to break them apart using basic chemistry. He boiled the dark liquid over fires. He mixed it with harsh, smelly chemicals like ammonia. He filtered the liquid through pieces of cloth again and again to clean away the dirt. As you can probably guess, he failed hundreds of times. The small room smelled terrible, his eyes burned from the chemical smoke, and his hands were constantly stained with dark, sticky ink. But the young helper refused to give up. But then, on one very cold winter night, something incredible happened at his workbench. Just imagine looking over his shoulder. He looked inside his glass container, and the dark, messy liquid had completely disappeared. At the bottom of the clean glass, he saw a small pile of beautiful, tiny crystals. They were white and shiny, looking almost like sweet crystals of sugar. Think about how he must have felt. Friedrich held the glass close to his candle flame, his hands shaking with excitement. He had done what the world's greatest chemists said was impossible. He had pulled the pure, active medicine out of a plant. He named these tiny white crystals morphium, choosing the name of Morpheus, the ancient Greek god of dreams. But here is where the story gets crazy. To make sure his discovery was real and not a mistake, Friedrich did something incredibly dangerous. He did not have laboratory animals to test the white crystals, so he decided to use himself and 3 young friends as human test subjects. Each young man swallowed a small piece of the pure white crystal. Within a few short minutes, a terrifying power hit their bodies. Friedrich felt a heavy, dark exhaustion crash over his mind. His arms and legs felt as heavy as stone blocks. He could barely raise his head. He and his 3 friends dropped directly onto the wooden floor of the pharmacy and fell into a deep, paralyzed sleep. Miraculously, when they finally opened their eyes the next morning, they were alive, though very dizzy and nursing terrible headaches. But Friedrich was filled with immense joy. He knew his discovery was a success. He had found a pure medicine that could stop pain every single time, with the exact same strength. The dangerous guessing game of medicine was finally over. But just as quickly as it came, his happiness vanished. A new and devastating problem had appeared. You see, if a medicine is going to save a person who is crying out from a severe injury, that medicine needs to work very fast. The easiest and best way to give a fast medicine is to dissolve it. Dissolve means to mix a solid powder into a liquid until it completely disappears, like sugar mixing into a cup of hot tea. When a medicine is a clear liquid, a patient can swallow it easily, and their stomach absorbs it in just a few minutes. But there was a massive problem. The god of dreams completely refused to dissolve.
Friedrich took some of his beautiful new white crystals and dropped them into a vial of clear water. They did not melt. They did not mix. They simply fell through the water and sat at the bottom of the glass like tiny sand grains. He tried absolutely everything to fix this. He stirred the water with a small spoon until his arm was tired and sore. He heated the glass over a burning flame until the water was boiling hot. He shook the bottle violently back and forth, but it was no use. The white powder just swirled around in the water for a brief moment, making the liquid look cloudy, and then fell right back to the bottom. In its pure, natural form, his morphium powder was almost completely waterproof. Think about what this meant. This was an absolute nightmare for practical medicine. What would happen if a doctor tried to use this cloudy liquid for a sick patient? If the doctor poured a spoonful from the top of the bottle, it would be just plain water with no medicine at all. The patient would receive no pain relief and would continue to suffer. But if the doctor gave the patient the very last spoonful from the bottom of the bottle, it would contain the entire pile of heavy white powder. That concentrated dose would stop the patient's heart and kill them instantly. Just imagine the sheer frustration. Friedrich had the ultimate cure for human suffering right in his hands, but the door to using it safely was completely locked. Many weeks passed by slowly. The young pharmacy helper felt deeply sad and defeated. His wooden workbench became a graveyard of cloudy, failed glass bottles. He tried mixing the white crystals with red wine, with strong alcohol, and with sweet fruit syrups. Nothing worked. The morphium stayed stubborn, dry, and dangerous to use. Then, late one quiet night, his frustration finally reached a breaking point. The pharmacy shop was cold and completely silent. The only sound was the winter wind blowing outside the glass window. The air inside smelled of bitter herbs and sharp chemical fumes. Friedrich stood over his messy desk, staring at a glass beaker. At the bottom of that beaker, the white powder seemed to mock him, completely refusing to dissolve into the water. On the shelves around his desk sat heavy glass jars containing dangerous chemicals used for industrial work and deep cleaning. One of these jars contained a thick liquid called oil of vitriol. Today, we call this substance sulfuric acid. It was an incredibly dangerous, burning liquid that could eat through wood and burn human skin instantly. It was a chemical you normally kept far, far away from any safe medicine. But you know, history often changes in the blink of an eye, and usually because of a tired mind and a slipping hand. Just picture that moment. We do not know if Friedrich was trying a desperate, wild experiment because he was so frustrated, or if his hand simply shook because he had not slept for days. But in one sudden moment, a small splash of that burning, dangerous acid fell out of its heavy jar. It dropped directly into the cloudy glass of water and morphium. Friedrich must have jumped back from his bench in absolute horror. He probably thought the strong acid would burn and incinerate his precious crystals, turning his months of hard work into a ruined pile of black smoke and useless sludge. But instead of smoke, he heard a very quiet, gentle sound, a soft hiss. Imagine holding your breath right along with him. He stopped breathing and leaned his face close to the glass beaker. The yellow candlelight shone through the water, and Friedrich saw something that looked like absolute magic. The cloudy white powder was not burning, it was disappearing. Right before his eyes, the tiny, stubborn white rocks that had survived boiling water and strong alcohol were suddenly melting away like ice cubes under a hot sun.
He picked up the glass beaker with fingers that were shaking from pure excitement. He gently swirled the liquid around. Within a few short seconds, the glass was filled with a perfectly beautiful, transparent liquid. It looked exactly like pure, clean water from a fresh mountain spring. The dangerous, burning acid had not destroyed the medicine. It had saved it. By dropping a strong acid onto his alkaline morphium powder, Friedrich had accidentally created a perfect chemical balance. The two opposite forces locked together tightly and changed into a brand new form. He had created a medical salt. Today, we call this miracle substance morphine sulfate. Friedrich carefully heated the clear liquid until all the water evaporated into the air. When the glass container was completely dry, he found a beautiful pile of soft, feathery crystals. He took a tiny pinch of these new, feathery crystals and dropped them into a fresh glass of ordinary cold water. They vanished instantly. They dissolved with absolute perfection, leaving the water completely clear and safe to drink. Think about the weight of that moment. That one clumsy mistake in the dark pharmacy changed human history forever. Many years later, in the year 1853, doctors invented the medical syringe. Friedrich's accidental salt was the exact answer the world needed. Because it dissolved so perfectly without leaving any solid pieces behind, it could be injected directly into the human bloodstream. Just imagine the sheer relief it brought. Suddenly, on the battlefields of the world, medicine transformed. When a soldier was wounded in a terrible war, the doctor simply pushed the plunger of a small syringe filled with Friedrich's clear, liquid salt. Within a single minute, the soldier's screaming stopped, and they drifted into a painless, safe sleep. This miracle medicine allowed surgeons to perform long, complicated operations that saved millions of lives. Operations that would have killed a person from pure pain shock just 50 years before. Friedrich Sertürner never became a rich or famous man from his incredible work. He lived a quiet, simple life as a local pharmacist. But his legacy of mercy is alive in every single hospital in the world today. Every time a person is saved from agonizing pain, they are experiencing the protection of that young helper. They owe their peace to the 21-year-old boy who refused to accept the lies of a flower, who pulled the god of dreams out of the dark earth, and who, in a moment of tired serendipity, dropped burning acid into his water, and finally taught the miracle how to swim.